بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور.
سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور.
صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور،
يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور.
صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. واطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. راقيا بالعلم نحو النجم مزدان شكور،
رافضا كل التدني رافضا نفس الغرور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور.
وعلي ثم بالدين معاذ لا يبور، اقرأوا التاريخ تروي عنه أفواه سطور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. فهو كالشمعة تذهب حتى تأتينا بنور،
ساهر بالليل علم وبأوقات سحور.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور.
أنتم اليوم كنبت قد علا فوق الجذور، يا أساس الدين يا صرحنا يا صلب الصخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and welcome to Islamic Oasis live. As always, brothers and sisters, we try our best to bring to you the most discussions that will be the most beneficial, whether it's the events or the affairs of the Muslims, whether it's here in this country or abroad. We try our best to bring to you, activists, journalists, ulama, and teachers of knowledge who are those who are amongst us here or those who are outside this country, in order to give you a perspective that I don't think many of us get in this country. Today we have Ustadh Asim Kazi. Many of you may know him already. He has been on this show many times before, and we discuss many things regarding issues here, overseas, regarding usuli issues. He's a scholar. He is someone who, as a professional, he's an IT engineer. At the same time, he's an alim who does what he does for the sake of Allah purely. So inshallah, today's topic is the scholars, yani the ulama and the tyrants. And this because Allah Azza wa Jal, dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. He said, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. The people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most are the ulama. And there's a very big connection, brothers and sisters, to those who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who fear the tyrants. In another place, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned about the ulama, he said, Al-ulama warasat al-anbiya, that ulama are the wirasa, yani the inheritance, they carry the inheritance of the anbiya. And that is their knowledge, that is their teaching of this deen, that is their taqwa in calling the people to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, no matter what the cost. And with this, I will welcome Ustadh Asim Kazi. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Allah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. Akhi, good to have you back here. I'm sure you know it's going to be a very lively discussion. Inshallah, a discussion that will be very beneficial to the ummah, to the ummah and to humanity at large, bi'iznillahi ta'ala, because obviously everyone is looking for guidance, whether they are from the Muslims and those who are looking for not only guidance but a way out of the miseries that they are living in. So these kind of discussions, Sheikh, bring people, it's a reminder to bring people back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what better discussion than the discussion on this topic, which is the scholars and the tyrants. Sheikh, I'll tell you why we chose this topic. Because what we see in general in the Muslim communities, at least, that the ulama play a very pivotal role in creating public opinion in the lives of the Muslims. I mean, they play a very close role in their opinions matter, what they say matters in general, what they teach matters, even how they say something matters. And today, because we see that the tyrants are dominant in the world, and so the question that comes up is the ulama that play such a dominant role in the Muslim communities or Muslim countries or arad al-Muslimin, or in the lands of the Muslims, buldan al-Muslimin, why is it that we don't see ulama playing a more dynamic role when taking stands against the tyrants?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I think before we dive directly into the question regarding why the ulama are not doing what they should have been doing, it's good to just touch base on the subject of the scholars themselves, who are scholars, and to understand their how big of a status Allah Azza wa Jal has given to the true scholars. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all and keep us all on the right path.
Ameen.
But it is important to have that, because the question that you're asking, if we dive directly into that question, it would sound as if we are just here to talk about why the scholars are not doing. I think it's good to know what they should be doing first. It will help. Yeah?
No problem. Go ahead.
So, by the way, I was overwhelmed by the starting slides that you had. That would have been sufficient for this talk if we just read those few quotes from the scholars of the past, what they have said about the scholars and the job of the scholars in general. And we probably don't even have to do this talk at all if we just talk about those things. But inshallah, we'll try our best, whatever we can do with the time we have. Now, you have already mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the kind of a definition of the scholars. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ عُلَمَاءُ, that the scholars are the one who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For that, we have to think a little bit deeper to understand that what does it mean? Because scholars or the alim is the one who has the ilm from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Quran and the Sunnah. Hence, he has the knowledge, and the knowledge that he knows this is the correct knowledge that causes him to realize the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and causes him to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the ilm is there, that should be the result of that. And including the khashiyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. And as you have mentioned the other hadith, that the ulama'u khulafa al-anbiya, that the ulama are the successors of the prophets. And prophets do not leave any dinar or dirham. They leave the knowledge. So what the scholar is supposed to be doing is the job of the prophets. That is the burden that lies on the shoulders of the scholars, or at least on the true scholars. So when we talk about that, it is important for us to understand that what was the job of the prophets and how they carried the da'wah of Islam. And when we say prophets, we talk about, in our case as Muslims, we're talking about specifically Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he carried the message of Islam to the mankind, did he make any kind of compromises? Or did he give up any part of the deen? And we know for sure, and I believe not a single sane Muslim would say anything but this, that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam carried the da'wah of Islam in the best possible manner, without changing anything, without modifying anything that was given to him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to convey to the people. So that's, hence we have Islam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, the job for us is to carry this message, right? Yes.
I understand, but here's the thing, Sheikh. Look, when we, so for me, for instance, if I'm looking at a scholar, I'm a layman, I'm just here to ask questions because I want to learn. Do you define a theologian as a scholar?
Well, it depends.
I know, so it's a tough question. I know. And here's why I'm asking, so that maybe that gives you my because we do have a lot of theologians, and we so they will discuss what's above the sky and what's under the earth, but then the affairs of this, the events, the situations that are constantly at the doorstep of the Muslims, they have left that to the politicians, in many ways to the juhala. So do you consider them to be scholars, or do you consider an ideologue? And if you can kind of define those terms for me, what is a person who follows an ideology versus a person who follows a theology?
See, when we talk about ideologue, a person who has an ideology that he's living by, in other words, you want to call him that he has a creed from which he can extract system of life, and he lives accordingly. There's one aspect of a scholar is that he lives by what he is carrying. A scholar cannot be the one who carries the knowledge, but he does not reflect that in his lifestyle, because scholars become like an example for the people to look up to. when somebody is carrying these titles, these are heavy titles, and we should be careful about these titles to be used for. Who are we using for? And for myself, I call myself, I'm just a student of knowledge right now. But in general, when we talk about the scholars, we are talking about the ones who have the knowledge to extract the rules from the wahi that was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the form of the Quran and the Sunnah, and they can tell us, and they can learn them for themselves as well, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us in all our life affairs. It's not just about above the heavens and under the earth. Rather, it's about above the heaven, in the heavens and under the earth, and also above the earth, that we live our lives. Because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was sent to us, he did not just only talk about some spirituality and just only about theology as a matter of a religion that had nothing to do with life affairs. Rather, he gave us a comprehensive way of life that dealt with the politics, that dealt with economy, that dealt with social system, ruling system, judicial, and on and on and on. Anything that we do in our lives, it is addressed by Islam, by what Rasulullah brought. So a scholar who isolates himself to just the spiritual aspect of the deen, it is, in my opinion, if he is not intentionally doing that, then he is more of a product of a secular system which is out there that has separated life from the deen and expectations from the people who follow any kind of religion to keep their religion only to their spirituality, to ibadat and akhlaq and manners, and not about the life affairs.
But Sheikh, the theologians that I'm talking about, because I don't consider them to be ideologues, and I don't even think they know what that means. But here's the thing: you find the same people who will always, whenever it comes to Islam, they will, like we have masajid being, the youth are being told, don't ask questions regarding fiqh. Why? Because that is what connects you to the affairs of life, the usul, the fiqh. Then at the same time that, don't ask questions regarding this, but then, don't ask anybody else questions either. Just ask us. Don't ask questions on fiqh, but then don't ask questions to anybody else either. So, and third, they say that, look, we don't indulge in the politics, we don't indulge and we don't do these things, but at the same time, they are the people, many times we find them announcing and giving khutbahs regarding, for instance, voting and being part of a secular system. So, is this, in the personalities of the ulama today, Sheikh, do you see a contradiction that, is there something, what is it that makes them the way they have become? They will call for secularism, and then at the same time, they'll tell the people, don't ask questions regarding fiqh, but whatever questions you have, come to us. How does this make any sense? So who should we go for the fiqh questions?
Of course, we have to go back to the ones who know. Allah Azza wa Jal reminds us of, if you don't know, go to the people who know. So we are supposed to go to the people who are of knowledge. And when we are saying knowledge of the deen, that they are able to give us the answers based on Islam. Now, that's what is expected from them. Now, if they are not doing this, their neck is on the line. They are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where the khashiyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in. That whether a person has the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not, and I'm not questioning a specific scholar's intentions or anything. Of course, we are not sitting here talking about a specific scholar, whether his intentions were good or bad. We are talking about here, in generality, if there are people who are scholars of Islam, and when the questions are asked regarding the life affairs, then it was told to them, to people, that first of all, do not indulge too much into the fiqh. This is not that you're supposed to be getting involved into. And if you have anything, just come to us. So it's almost sounds like we are
this is
opening-
actually being said to the students or youth in the masajid. So I'm not making this up, by the way. I'm telling you what is being told to the youth.
Yes, and I'm quite familiar with that kind of a responses, and it can be seen from two ways, right? One is somebody is probably saying it with sincerity, and he analyzes the youth, and he understands that he is not capable of understanding the deen properly at this point. Hence, they are, because we have to look at both sides, right? It's not necessarily just one. So there could be people who do not have enough knowledge, so hence they don't want them to be misguided or confused. Rather, they want to build them up. So they want them to come to them. They assume that they are the one who have the knowledge, and they can build them up, and to the point that he or she will be able to understand the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he will be able to extract the rules probably at one point in his life or her life by himself or herself. But there are people who have made general statements to all not to get indulged into fiqh at all, and or differences of opinions. Hence, you just come back to us and we will tell you. So don't, even if somebody is telling you something which is halal or haram and giving you evidences, just keep your ears shut, and we are the source of knowledge for you from now on. That's a very problematic and dangerous kind of attitude from the scholars. It should be rather that we are the one who can provide you the knowledge of Islam, and while we are providing knowledge, we should be able to build the ummah up, not to bring them down further and shutting all the doors and they don't learn anything. It should be the way that we are opening the doors so people can see that how the rules are extracted, and hence it's open for the others as well. It's not that we don't need scholars at all, or we are only dependent on the current scholars. It should be this way, that fine, we should go to the scholars, because this is where you go and gain the knowledge. But the knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not command us anywhere that we should be the one who will be just obeying the scholars blindly. Rather, we have been commanded to ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul, to obey Allah and His Messenger. And even where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the scholars or the people who have authority to be obeyed, in that case is a conditional rule there. That if there is, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ, the ayah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَيَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ أُولُو الْأَمْرِ مِنكُمْ فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. That if you have a disagreement, if you have a conflict with the scholars or ulul amr, the one who have authority over you from among you, from the Muslimin, then if you have a conflict, return back to Allah and His Messenger, because that's the initial hukum for us to obey Allah and His Messenger.
Sheikh,
It goes back to the wahi at least, not to a personality. Yeah.
So you mentioned the ayah ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulul amr minkum, and so I was reading Ibn al-Qayyim on this, and he said something that even when Allah mentions wa ulul amr minkum, this means the ulama, at least according to what he was saying, that this means the ulama. So the ulama are being told that you are playing the role of the umara, people who are in that position. So let me ask you, Sheikh, do you think the ulama realize their responsibility, that right after Allah mentions watu Allah watu Rasul, they are being mentioned next? Yani what responsibility that means, that they will be asked for on the day of judgment, with the way many that we see, the way do they see their role that way, that this is not at all, you're talking about right after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are being mentioned.
I think scholars
The
understand
severity
it
of
well.
this, I guess.
They understand it well, that what is their responsibility and how much of an impact they really have. So they really, if we think of it from the angle of what kind of an impact the scholars have on the nations in general, we see that the intellectual aspect of the nations is controlled by the people who have knowledge. Yes, there is another aspect, which is the material aspect of it, where you see the people who have power or authority. I don't want to make it sound like as if I am trying to say separation of religion from the state when I'm talking about intellect and material power, because it's not necessarily these are separate things in Islam. We don't separate them. Both of them are from Islam. Whether we are talking about the intellectuals or the ulama, these are the followers of Islam, and they understand their role over the people, and at the same time the one who happen to have the authority. So both of them have to have the knowledge of Islam first of all. Whether they have people of authority, people of power, people who have material power, all of them are supposed to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have to gain the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Tawbah talks about the Jews and the Christians. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, inna kathiran min al-ahbari wa-ruhbani la ya'kuluna amwal al-nasi bil-batili wa yasudduna an sabilillah. والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم. See, in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about ahbar and ruhban. There are three categories of people are mentioned here. It's not just one or two, rather three categories mentioned here. One, and this is the way Ibn Kathir talks about this ayah. And he says that there are three people are mentioned here. One are ahbar. These are the rabbis of the Jews, which are the ones who were scholars of the Torah. While Ruhban are the one who are monk. So these are the people who were worshippers, who have left everything and they are just involved in worship. These were the Christians. Because Christian scholars in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a different term. They are referred as qissisin. The people, these are the knowledgeable among the Christians. And then Allah talks about third category, yaknizuna dhahaba wal fidda. The one who holds the gold and silver and they are hoarding them. So these are the three people who really have huge impact on the people. Okay. Now, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about the Yahud and Nasara here? Because Quran is filled with the stories of the Yahud and Nasara or Bani Israel. Because it was expected that the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam will follow the footsteps of the Yahud and Nasara. As one of the hadith talks about, that my Ummah will follow the previous nations inch by inch and foot by foot and inch by inch. And if they enter into lizard hole, they will enter. And Sahaba asked, who was Rasulullah was referred to? Were the Yahud and Nasara? And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned who else? And another report talks about that Rasulullah was referring to the Romans and the Persians. Meaning, if you take both the reports together, one is talking from the perspective of the Yahud and Nasara, and the other is talking from the perspective of the people who really had power in those times, which were two superpowers, Romans and Persians. But the Muslims will be following them. Hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have repeatedly mentioned these stories. So the stories of, when it's talking about Ahbar and Ruhban, or the people who have material power, it's mentioned for us so we would not indulge into the very same kind of a scenario. And for these people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it's a sarcasm that فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. There's a glad tidings for them. There's a news for them about the severe punishment waiting for them. And hence, if we Muslims follow the same footsteps, the result will be same for us as well.
Sheikh,
So the scholars understand that. Yes.
See, if you can just address this, because there's a lot of questions here. When it comes to scholarship, we are seeing that, ulama or students of knowledge in general, we're very good at memorizing. We memorize a lot. And we are very good at, just, I guess, copy-pasting things. I mean, that's what, has happened to us, because I see that, dealing with the ulama, dealing with the students of knowledge, meeting, greeting, and you see that the sharpness that is required in the ulama, the sharpness to see the games that are being played with the Muslims, the sharpness to see the decline of this ummah, the sharpness to see the ideological attack on this ummah. You know, like you just mentioned, Yahud and Nasara, and that we will follow them. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said that, you know, Mathal al-Himar, as far as talking about the Yahud, that they carry so many books on their backs and they're just like donkeys. Mm-hmm. Are we following those steps, Sheikh? Have we become those donkeys? That we are just carrying books on our backs, thousands and thousands of them, while right in front of us, you know, the events that are taking in front of this ummah, is somehow we are blinded by it.
Mm-hmm. Obviously there are people you will find among the Muslim ummah as well now who are fulfilling the very same scenarios which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mentioned about the Yahud and Nasara today as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the best about the intentions of those people. But there are people who are really fall under the very same category. I'll give you an example along the lines what you were saying. There's a brother recently, actually last week I was talking to, and he's at the verge of finishing his 4-year degree in the Sharia. And mashallah, that brother is already a very knowledgeable brother. So when he was taking the finals, he was telling me, and he was crying at that time. He was saying that what kind of exams are they giving to us? It's like kids. They're dealing us like kids. Yeah. And they are the one who are finishing up their degrees. And so he was saying, and he was crying not because of out of any arrogance or anything. He was thinking of where is our level now?
So Sheikh, tell me, will this attract intellectuals? Will this attract the serious thinkers of this ummah? Will this attract that statement you just made? And this man, no, I'm sure, you know, he will fulfill his, because, you know, obviously he recognizes the decline. So he's saying and he's crying about it. But do you think that when you see the intelligentsia of the Muslims, you think they will be attracted to this when they see the way, how, I mean, an alim is being given an exam like a child is being given the exam?
I mean, look, here when we're talking about situations like this as examples, and I obviously I'm talking about one of the schools, not necessarily all the schools would be the same way. Sure. I cannot say anything about the
gender production of the ulama, so I mean it doesn't matter one or two.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that we have to understand is these schools that we have, they are not created in vacuum. They are created, or they've been there or left there in a real life situation where these Muslim lands that we are talking about today, they were colonialized for hundreds of years in some cases, and other cases they are not probably colonialized, but they continuously being controlled, where they cannot have their own domestic policies or foreign policies, and they have been dictated to run the affairs of the ummah based on the foreign policies of the superpowers. Now, based on that, they have also left some educational systems or policies within the Islamic lands, which are, even until today, they are modified according to the needs of the masters. And that hence, I would not, and this is where I always, whenever I talk to you about this subject, I am being careful here when I'm discussing this subject, because it's not the issue of those brothers who have spent all their life, throughout their lives, and they studied and they have got degrees and all those things, that by any means they are not sincere brothers. They have given up their life for Islam.
Sheikh Asim, here's the thing. Look, you know,
but we have to be careful about that subject.
I agree with you. We are beyond that. We are beyond that. This discussion is much beyond that. This discussion is, we are the whole point of the discussion is that we are trying to raise the level of the discussion in this ummah, right? And the ulama are at the forefront, whether that is just the case. I mean, they are the ones who are going to face whatever it is thrown at us at this point, at the Muslims. The first line of defense are the ulama.
True.
So if the ulama are not there, and if the intelligentsia of the ummah, the intellectuals, the people who if they're not prepared and they're not the ones in this field protecting this ummah, I mean, how, then who should we depend on if not the ulama?
So it's incorrect to say that there are no ulama.
No, I'm not saying they're not ulama. I'm just saying
So
in general what we are seeing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, politicians fool them. Look, Sheikh, and what I'm observing, you find the politicians fool them. You find the masajid of the boards, they are crushed under the monthly their salaries. We find them in the rubber stamping whatever goes on as long as they get that. I mean, you hear them say that. I'm not saying this, right? You hear the mashayikh say that, look, man, I'm dependent on this right now. What should I do? If I say anything else, these guys will just fire me. Right? You find people even going to the mimbar, giving a khutbah. Then you go and you tell them, Sheikh, this is incorrect. They said, I know, I just said it, but I myself don't do it. You find this type of so who should we trust? This is what I'm saying. And they need to understand that we are looking to trust them.
Yeah. As I said, number one thing is there are many scholars out there who are, alhamdulillah, they are the one who are sticking to the path of Allah and His Messenger. And yes, what we see is there are many barriers have been placed in front of their work. Many of them, unfortunately or fortunately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the best, that they have been abducted, they have been imprisoned, and many of them have been martyred as well in the past and even in current days as well. So, which itself is a sign that there are scholars among the ummah who are trying still within their capabilities what they can do. But obviously there are other powers out there who are trying to crush the message of Islam, the deen of Islam. And that is happening. This is not something new. It started from the inception of Islam. And it is continuing on. And it will continue on until the day of judgment. It's up to the scholars. This is why we have to go back to the ayah that talks about إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. So this is why it is very important for those scholars to have the khashiyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will push them to do the right thing. Look, many of these scholars are, even though we don't find them at this point, not necessarily they are corrupting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes they are keeping silent, right? They don't say the haqq at the time they should have been saying. And they need probably push reminders. We all need reminders from each other, right? Wallahu alam, the discussion we are having today, how many of the scholars may be able to listen to it, and maybe they will come back and correct us and guide us as well to the shortcomings that we are having. At the same time, you never know that who will wake up and able to do the job that is expected from them. So we have to continue what we are supposed to be doing. But now, to say that, who are we supposed to go back to? Number one thing is, we have to go back to the Quran and Sunnah again and again, Allah and His Messenger. That is our criterion. Yeah. Now, whichever scholar is not going by what Allah and His Messenger has given to us, that scholarship is of no use. Okay. No matter how many degrees a person has and how many ijazas he has from different scholars, if he is not backing it up what he is presenting, then it is of use. This knowledge is of no use. But there are scholars. We have to search for those scholars, and we have to stick with them and make more of those kind of scholars, inshallah. Yeah, and the scholarship is not necessarily have to be connected to a madrasa or a university, as unfortunately nowadays we think of it. Look, in the past, we may not have the university system as we are seeing today,
Or the madaris
but
system
we,
in general.
but we did have scholars who were conveying the message to the people, teaching the students, and they were preparing the future scholars as well.
Let me
This is
ask you
why
this, Sheikh.
even-
Sheikh, do you think
Yes.
that this whole idea of the madrasa system? I mean, obviously, we don't want ignorant people out there too. But do you think that this system, which really took roots right after British imperialism and colonialism, things like this, but do you think that this was put together in order to create a class? The madrasa system that we see today, right? This holy man, supposedly a holy man class, that somehow because we see some ulama present themselves as they can't go wrong. Some of them present themselves as this holy man concept. They are the do you think that this was created in order to disconnect the ulama from the masses, or create a class that will disconnect, I guess that, I guess I'm asking, is there a class that was put together, that limitations were put together on them, that they are the only ones that can answer the deen of Allah, and everybody else is just, yes, sir?
Whether we can find an exact quote or the books written on the subject this way, that this is what we've done, but this is what we see though today. Okay, the reality is this today.
So you observe it. It's not just me observing this.
No, this is very evident. It's out there. It's very clear that this kind of an idea have been presented in a manner that you are the one sole carrier of this work. When it comes to knowledge, yes, you are, as the hadith says, right? And somebody can abuse the hadith in the wrong way, that they are the inheritors of the anbiya. Yes, you are the inheritors of the anbiya, but what did the anbiya do? They were not the one who were making up the stuff from their own mind, or when there was some pressure from whosoever is coming from, they were not changing or giving in from the deen perspective. So they kept, Muhammad ﷺ's life is filled with examples of how many times he was approached to make compromises with the Quraysh, with the different tribes who came to Rasulullah ﷺ and wanted them to make compromises, and his response was very clear. So now, if the scholars say that, and they believe from the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ that they are the khulafa of the anbiya, then they have to act accordingly as well. Now, this cannot be used for the current situations where we find the scholars who are keeping themselves away from the politics and trying to show that they are apolitical, that Islam has nothing to do with politics, and the moment when the kufr system have been presented in front of people by those candidates who come in and they are talking about implementing the kufr system, and they go along with that, and now suddenly they become political when the kufr system, somebody's talking about the system of lives from the kufr, then they become political. So that's a very clear definition of being a secular person. So that person is not Islamic thought.
Yeah, these are not Shakhsiyya Islamiyya. This is, I don't know what it is. It's a secular personality.
It is a secular personality. Whether a person says it or not, whether he says that he is against secularism,
so this
but
is not
the
an alim.
mentality is secular here.
But so this is not an alim.
That's what I'm saying. The alim is the person who is carrying the knowledge, right? You can carry a knowledge, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about scholars in that manner as well. That those scholars, like when you were giving the example of the Yahud, they are carrying the books, hundreds of books. It's like a donkey. So it doesn't really matter the word.
There's another question I had regarding where the decline began in the amongst the ulama. There was this instance that took place. I'm sure you know the 1857 Tanzimat issue, when in the Ottomani state, where you had a situation where the ulama were being told, in some ways it seems almost from outsiders, Russia at the time and others, Britain, France, forcing their will somehow, trying to at least forcing their will, and somehow they thought that maybe by codifying the Islam, Sharia, let's say, usul, in these majallat, or these 100 or 200 points that they put together, and then they had these maxims, I guess my question, Sheikh, is that do you think that when they did this, the idea of codifying the law, did this in many ways limit the ulama in what in progress, in when it comes to usul, when it comes to continuously producing knowledge, and do you think that became, did that become a hurdle? And of course there's both sides to this, but
yeah, to a certain extent, right? And we see that when this Tanzimat issue came up in the Khilafah Uthmaniyya, even at that time, when Muslims accepted those codes that they were trying to present up from the pressure from the West at that time, and the Khilafah was becoming weaker and weaker, it was, even at that time, they had to present those codes as part of Sharia. They did not come out and said that, oh, Islam is not valid anymore, hence we will be taking the laws from outside of Islam in that way. It was more of they tried to play with the Sharia in a manner that it is part of the Sharia. It was presented as the part of the Sharia. Okay, whether it was the maslaha issue was mentioned there or whatsoever, that resulted into these ideas. But the thing is, we have to always think of this way. Even when the Tanzimat issue came up, it's not overnight that the Muslims were able to accept these kind of ideas. It happened over the time, and there was a weakness that was within the ummah. That was whether it was the language, the disconnect from the Arabic language, or the issue of the ijtihad became weaker and weaker within the ummah, and we had very few mujtahideen within the ummah who were doing the ijtihad, and these things made the weakness came here. And then when these things were thrown at the ummah, they accepted that. Accepted to a certain extent. I would not say it was accepted, because it was not really
there were
imposed.
People who challenged it. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I think
it did not come in effect. Many of those things that was mentioned there, they did not come in effect. They tried to codify many things there. Yeah.
Okay. But do we see the effects of it today?
We see the effect of that. We see the effect of I see more the effect of colonialization more than that. But I think they go hand in hand. So the policies that were placed within the ummah, or the educational policies that did impact the ummah, and we are seeing the results of the scholars that are produced in that manner. But at the same time, we see that still there are scholars that have been produced from the very same institutes also, and because they were not able to completely took away the knowledge. The knowledge is still there. Yeah, so knowledge is there, and if the people have the access to that knowledge, they are able to come back and talk about the Sharia the way it's supposed to be taught. And
so
they are
teaching. Let me ask, when we talk about these, I guess, tanzimat, or when we talk about, let's say, the codification, the usuli issues, yani, is it because, did it become where people could not go back and, I guess, when you codify something, it's there. You don't have to ever go back and look for, I guess, dalil. Right? There's I just look at it, what's the issue here? I just look at it there and go on. But so today, this is what we're seeing, right? Like, no one gives you a dalil for what they're doing. They just say, oh, fatwa is here.
So to be fair, right? It is allowed that a person who is knowledgeable, and if he's asked about certain issue, he can give the answer, what the Islam says about that. It's not like he has to give all the evidences about whatsoever has been asked. Just to be very clear.
Every single time, yani, it doesn't have to give.
Yeah, you're not gonna go into the detail of the this is the ayah, this is the hadith, and this is how all the usul have been used to extract. Because there's a very high probability the one that you are answering the question, he may not even understand.
No,
what
I
has
understand,
been
but I'm saying, I guess within
right?
the ulama, in the institution of the ulama, within the institution of the ulama, did that, because in that case you are teaching dalil.
Right, and that is a problem. Yes, there is to a certain extent there is a huge problem about that. That it has become more of going back and looking up. It's like you have an index and you go back. Okay, this is the hukum. This is what I'm looking for, and that's what the answer is.
So
and
I mean,
that is a weakness.
We would never produce a mujtahid.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like this, definitely you cannot produce a mujtahid. Yeah, for a mujtahid, you have to have the person who have the knowledge of the language, the knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith and the usul, and all those many other things which are mentioned about how to extract a rule, how to make a ijtihad, how to istinbat different ahkam from the sources of Islam. So you need scholars, and still there are many scholars out there who are doing the job the way it's supposed to be done. But there's a huge population, when I say the number of scholars who are coming out, they are more like that, who can just pinpoint, okay, this is, if you have this question, here's the answer. And it's written in this book or that book. Which is needed too. Don't take me wrong. Of course, you need that as well.
What I'm saying, Sheikh, is that we see a lot of the ulama are disconnected from realities. Right? They are disconnected from realities. Like the other day, I was hearing alim. He's very famous, and he's from Mauritania. I don't have to say anything more. Very, very, very famous. Okay, and so they were asking him a lot of questions. Was on Al Jazeera, and he kept asking. He answered. He said, "Oh, is this?" And he did well until it came down to what is democracy. And then he said democracy, and then he connected that to what do you call this? Shura bainahum. And you're talking about someone who probably has at least 1,000 books memorized. Yani if you ask him the seerah, he will give you seerah in poetry. But then such a blunder in front of millions of people on Al Jazeera that Shura is democracy. How does that happen? Yani, really, is it really that they? This is. I think it was a sincere mistake. Sincerely, he doesn't know, because the way he's explaining it.
Yeah. So look, a few things to be very careful about, and I will start with the example of Imam Malik. Many of us probably have heard many times, but it's good to have that in front of us when we talk about these things. When Imam Malik was approached by a person who was sent by his tribe to ask, and he came from far, to Medina.
Yes.
And he asked 40 questions, and out of the 40, he only answered 4. And at that time, Imam Malik, rahimahullah, was considered the most knowledgeable person that people were aware of at that time. Hence, he was approached for the answers. And the person was surprised, and he said, "Yeah, Imam Malik, what am I supposed to tell my people? Because you are saying, for 36 questions, you say, I don't know. And Imam Malik said, go back and tell them, Imam Malik said, he doesn't know. That's all it is. Imam Malik said, he doesn't know. And that's what it's supposed to be. If we don't know, it should be a straight out answer that I don't know. Like Imam Malik's another statement, famous statement, I always, when I'm discussing this story, I mention that as well, because it's very important for us to understand. He said that half of the knowledge is to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you can only say, I don't know, if you recognize what you don't know. Right? So whosoever the scholar was, it's a blunder. If he is comparing a kufr system where sovereignty belongs to the man, compared to, we know in Islam the sovereignty belongs to the Shara. of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Sharia. Now, how can a person of knowledge can make a statement like this? And I don't think you'll be surprised. Unfortunately, the time and era we are living in, there are many people who will be making the very same blunder, because it's like this. If you are not, you don't have you're not using your own mind after gaining the knowledge to understand things of your own. If somebody has made a mistake, you're gonna continue to copy the same mistake again and again. As you mentioned, copy and paste is happening. So even for this, such a huge thing, it has become a norm for us today that many scholars would come up and they say as if the democracy or Jamhuriya is same as Islam. But while it is, these are two contradictory systems of life. Yeah.
But is this not clear in the books of fiqh, Sheikh? I mean, is this something that's not there or something? I mean, look, what is it? It's not there.
I can tell you, I had discussions with my own teachers when I was studying, and it was very clear from them that they understood very well that it is contradictory to Islam. They did not say that it is Islam, just to be very fair.
No, I understand, but what is it? They don't want to say it publicly, or they say it publicly, but then they say, look, because so ulama, sometimes they say things privately, but they don't want to say it publicly. Fine, but is this what an issue?
There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about that that Abdulul Jihad, Kalamatul Haq, and Sultan Najai, right? So now that this is the best form of jihad, that you say the haq, you say the truth in front of the one who is a tyrant ruler, right? So in general, when we talk about these things, we talk about in reference to the current time that we are living in, and I'm not sure if all the scholars are have been pressed or have been pushed down to this level that they have to say that. They are somehow either they're under the fear or they have misconceptions pushed down to their necks, and they're still just copying and pasting.
Let me ask you another question, and this is for clarification, because that was another something that was brought to me by, again, scholars. Because, you know, Sheikh, it's only scholars who can do these kind of things also, unfortunately, right? I mean, if even if you want to introduce something intellectually to the ummah, it's also, again, the ulama who do it, right? Mm-hmm. But the question was, when we asked that, look, can we follow democracy or things like this? So one of the answers was, and again, these people are sitting in very big seats. He said the answer was, if you are in, let's say, in a Muslim country, then following democracy, you cannot do that. But if you're in lands like this, US, UK, West in general, then there is something called, you are a shahid. So you have to get somebody who will be a wakil, who will represent you, because you have taken an oath to come here, and then so because of that you should appoint somebody that will represent you, as long as they do what is good. So is this can you explain, is there a blunder here in understanding secularism and Islam?
Yeah, I think the idea here to be understood here is when we're talking about living,
you're seeing what they're asking. I just want to make sure.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. And I think I haven't read the document. I have seen even a document about the very same issue have been circling around. But I have an idea what you're talking about. Yeah. I have read that long time ago, the similar document which was circulated about referring to that as being as you are being the witness here.
Yes.
And referring to participation in the kufr system as being a witness. And these are the words not even normally used for when it comes to the intakhabat. But anyways, let's go along with
intellectualizing foolishness. Go ahead.
Let's go along with what has been said here, right? So what we see here is we are saying that if you are in a Muslim land, then you should not follow that, and when you are in a non-Muslim land, you should follow. See, the idea is to understand whether you are in a Muslim land or you're non-Muslim land, if you are ruled by kufr laws, the society is same. It's a kufr society.
Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so yes, you may have Muslims are in majority in those lands, or at one point or other, it was under the rule of Islam, and it's not under the rule of Islam. But the current reality is they are all kufr society. Now, what we have to understand is what is our role as Muslims, yeah? Because at the end of the day, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether a person is a scholar or not a scholar, he's a mujtahid or muqallid, we are all accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah? So we have to know that what is allowed for us or what is expected from us, whether it's an obligation or it's permissibility, that what should be doing we as Muslims when we are living in the societies which are kufr society. This is what we have to know, rather than trying to twist the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner that just trying to create a comfort zone for yourself. I personally think of this as, instead of thinking, oh, I am living in the kufr society, hence I should go and have my representation in the system so I can make up some noise over there or get my rights to live comfortably here. I as a Muslim should be thinking of, I personally talk about myself, we should be thinking of this way, that we have an obligation on our neck from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to convey this message to even the non-Muslims who are here we are living with. What have we done to convey the message of Islam to them? And rather than us presenting them what Islam says, we are changing ourselves according to what the kufr system is offering us. So the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final messenger, was sent to the world in the society which is referred as the Jahiliyyah society. That society, he did not change himself or the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather he was there to change the society. And if we are thinking from that mindset, I think our actions will be different. Because all these excuses that we are coming up with, if you ask the following next generations that are coming up, maybe 2-3 generations ago, the people who started the whole mess, they were thinking of, oh, this is how we're going to carry the Islam to the people.
Right.
Today, it has become more of a, how am I going to get my rights from this system? If that's the case, then we have lost the battle. We are not here to give the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the mankind, Muslim or non-Muslim alike.
SubhanAllah. If brothers and sisters, if there are any questions, present the questions now, because we're actually almost out of time. Sheikh, just one more question before if we get questions from the people, if there are any. We just passed, I'm sure Omar Mukhtar, rahimahullah, he was hanged just a few days ago, as far as the anniversary was concerned, that he, by the Italians at one time. Then you had the stance that Ahmad ibn Hanbal took, even though majority of the ulama around him kind of let go while he stood his ground. And then you had Umar Mukhtar, he was accused of being Khariji, and then many things. Sheikh, in that environment, because I want to make sure that I also come up very clearly that I understand that there are ulama. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise their status in the dunya and the akhirah.
Ameen.
May Allah azza wa jal, of course they are paying the price of being an alim in jails of the Muslim world, being killed. I know many of the ulama who in Syria, for instance, killed. Now they are in subhanallah in their graves somewhere. I understand that, but Sheikh, I guess the question is that I understand ulama are also human beings. I mean, they have fear, they have children, they have families, so I understand that. But Sheikh, how when Allah says innama yakhshallaha min ibadihi al-ulama, can you and make me understand that? I mean, are they supposed to become superhuman? What is the issue here?
Obviously, there's no such thing. We don't believe in these kind of things, of course. So there's a superhuman serum
I
or something.
understand, but you know, the people
right?
come and say
Look,
these things. Yeah, they're also human beings.
Of course, that is a correct thing to say, that they are human beings, and even among the Sahaba we find that, right? Like the example of Ghazwatul Khandaq, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba, they were surrounded by the Ahzab of about 10,000 soldiers who surrounded the Medina. And according to the Mu'arrikhin, the people who wrote the Sirah, they say that this was a situation that they could have wiped out the whole Medina, that many people who were there, who surrounded the Medina, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a situation in a manner, it was very dark, very windy and cold. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the Sahaba, that included Abu Bakr is there, Umar is there, Uthman is there, Ali is there. These are great Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are the ones who are given the glad tiding of Jannah by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I'm not talking about only them. That's part of the rest of the Sahaba. Yeah, and that included even Sa'ad bin Mu'adh radiyallahu anh, about whom the very same battle he was injured and then martyred, about which Rasulullah mentioned that the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was shaken about his passing away, and the Malaika was descended to carry his janazah. Yeah, and they were fighting with each other. So these are the people I'm talking about now. And when among them, when Rasulullah asked the Sahaba, who's gonna go and get the news from the camp of the kuffar? Nobody moved forward. Yeah, they're talking about Sahaba. And by no means to bringing up this example means that we are by any means degrading the Sahaba here.
No, of course, no, I understand
They
the
were the greatest generation raised among the mankind. And but this is a lesson from us. There is weakness in us. Right? But the thing is, yes, there will be weakness among us. What do we do with that weakness? Do we become weaker and weaker on a daily basis? Or we build each other up? Or we become the ones that the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that every block strengthens the other. And we build each other up, help each other up, so we can do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Look, this life, no matter how much we plan for the future, none of us know if we are going to take the second breath or not. And that's the reminder we should have. I was just at the khutbah, I was, subhanAllah, it happened to be, I was talking to my kid, I was Muhammad Ali, one of the statements he made, and that was a good statement, even though I don't know what the context was, but the statement was valid. And he was saying, and of course it can be used for anything, but he said like this: live every day as this is your last day. Because one day it will be true. It will be your last day. Yeah, kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul will taste death. That's the idea. If we keep this in our mind, scholar, no scholar, look, it's not the issue of we are looking for somebody to blame for this, what is happening to the ummah. It's on every person's shoulder. Different people have different responsibilities. More you know, more you have, whether it's the wealth, whether it's the health, whether it's the knowledge, you are accountable for whatever you have given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is by tawfiq of Allah, whatever you have. So use it wisely, what Allah has given you. Okay.
Jazakumullahu khairan. So Sheikh, we will take questions, inshallah. Because of time, we'll take, let's say, 2 questions, inshallah. So go ahead, Sheikh, you want to put that on? Number 1 question is, if so much of the deen has been made into something, glasses are not working, sorry. Can you read that? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I can read that. If so much of the deen has been made into, some things are discussed in private while others are discussed in public, how is the khalis deen made more accessible to those general people looking for it? Or is this no longer possible?
No, I mean, okay. I guess I'll tell you, this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to others, where we ask a question, that question is different when they answer it privately, and then when the same question is asked publicly, it's a different answer. And so how do we deal with this, Sheikh? I guess that's the same thing the questioner is asking.
Yeah. Number one thing is, if a person is coming up with two different answers for the same question, he is the one who is accountable, and he has to give an evidence for giving two different answers at two different places. Okay? So because if that's the case, at one place he is lying. So he needs to have an evidence that it is allowed for him to lie in private or public, wherever he is doing that. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
No, I understand the answer. It's just
Okay.
that,
Now,
go ahead.
Now, continuing on to the part, how is the Khalis Deen made more accessible to those general people looking for it, right? Or is this no longer possible? Look, obviously, it is definitely possible. Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who has taken the responsibility on himself to protect this deen. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. That we have revealed this dhikr, which is the Quran. And as I have mentioned other places, other times as well, the Quran here is referred to as the whole deen. It's not just the Quran, of course, because Quran cannot be preserved without the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot be preserved if language is lost. So the Arabic is also preserved. So and the people who are going to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, they will continue to be there. It's up to us if we want to be part of that category where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use us to be the one who will keep the deen intact. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace us with the people who will do the job that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So it's up to us to be the one who replace the others, or to be the one who will be replaced. Right? So now the deen of Allah is there. So if the Khalis deen, it cannot be gone. That's what I'm trying to say here. So it is there.
Should we, let's say students of knowledge and the people who we realize, okay, when something is wrong being said, Sheikh, because unfortunately many times the ulama won't even answer this, but I'm asking you, should we, sometimes we hear things sometimes clearly haram in the khutab. Should the average person who's hearing it take a stand and say, Yani, what's going on here? Or should they say, well, I'm not an alim, I'm not somebody, maybe give him an excuse and let it go?
This is a subject that obviously there are two different things. There are two different gatherings we're talking about. It could be a khutbah, the Friday khutbah we talk about, or it could be a lecture. It could be anything, right?
Anything.
People are discussing something. Khutbah does not necessarily mean the Friday khutbah only.
Any lecture being given.
Sure. As the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man ra'a minkum al-munkara," right? Whosoever sees a munkar. It does not say an alim sees a munkar. It does not say a mushtahid or a mufti or this or that degree person will see the munkar. Yeah. It says man ra'a minkum. Man is a nakira, that is for whosoever, and this is why that it categorizes which category you fall under. فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِيَدِهِ. So you change it with your hand. And if you don't have the capability of changing, فَبِلِسَانِ, then you do with the tongue. And if you don't have that even, فَبِقَلْبِ, then with your heart you are feeling bad. وَذَلِكَ عَدَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And this is the lowest level, weakest level of the iman, that you are feeling bad when you see the munkar. So we have to assess ourselves, which category we fall under. And if we don't fall under any of these three categories, we have to question our iman. Do we even have iman left that cannot motivate us to that level? Now, about that, to raise the voice or to stop somebody, obviously we have to make sure about certain things. As I said, this has nothing to do with a scholar, non-scholar, but you have to know the subject that is discussed. Because certain things, look, this is ma'loom bid-darura. There's some knowledge everybody must know. There is no excuse for us that I don't know, I'm not a scholar. No, there's certain knowledge all of us must know. There's no get away. by just saying I don't know.
But let me ask
So,
one more. Go ahead.
Even in the any society which is not Islamic, even law does not let you go just because you did not know when you were breaking the law. So there are certain laws when you are breaking, you are accountable no matter what. Okay, so not to say that this is how the laws work. Okay, now when you talk about in Islam, there are certain laws everybody must know. So now going back to that, so when you want to raise the voice, I just want to suggest to whoever wants to do that, he should be well aware of the subject, at least whichever subject has been discussed. So it should not be in a manner that it could be an issue of ikhtilaf, of difference of opinion, and you may carry a different opinion than the other one, and to make a fuss about something which is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left the room for us to have ikhtilaf. Look, it does not mean that every matter can have ikhtilaf or difference of opinion. There are matters where you can have difference of opinion, there are matters you cannot have difference of opinion.
Yeah,
right?
clear
So
kufr and clear haram.
if there's clear kufr,
across
of course,
the schools.
we should think of this way, that by doing so, it's not that we want to make noise or want to make a fuss or something. Rather, it could be a brother who could be a slip of tongue, and you are trying to correct him, or it may not be slip of tongue. Then you are not trying to only correct him, but the ones who are listening as well. Because there are many people who think if somebody is speaking from a podium or who has a mic, so whatever he says must be right. That's not true.
Sheikh, the other thing is also, I guess, it's very unfortunate. I mean, has ignorance spread so much is also because the masses themselves are not studying Islam, and so you find that anyone is coming on the minbar and saying whatever they want, as long as they add a little bit Arabic here and there, they can almost justify anything, and the masses just shake their head and move on. I mean, what is the reason of that kind of decline amongst the masses also, Sheikh? I mean, this is also needs to be addressed.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing what you mentioned. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's reported in Tirmidhi, and I'll just paraphrase that. And I'm not saying that this is the exact state we are in, but the hadith talks like this: Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not raise the ilm, the knowledge. Rather, He takes away the scholars. And then the ignorant people, they are the one who start giving the fatwas to the people. So people go to the juhla, people go to the ignorant people, and not only that they give the fatwas, they misguide the others, but they are misguiding themselves as well. So I believe we are not in that situation. Alhamdulillah, there are still many scholars out there. We have to just look for the right ones and approach them, inshallah, and that will be
question number 2. Let's put that up there. Is the issue that there aren't enough mujtahideen in the ummah, or that the ruling what reached by earlier ulama are not being applied and explained?
Okay, so obviously there's a decline in the mujtahideen for sure among the Muslim ummah. That so we have to distinguish between when people say just the word alim or a mufti or whichever alim, fadil, their different terminologies have been used, whether they have the capability of doing the ijtihad or not. And when you dig deep, you find out that unfortunately most of them do not have the capability of doing the ijtihad. So that has declined, and inshallah that will come up. But see, the whole discussion we have been having for past hour and a half, I do like to cap it up with something which is very important in this whole thing. We are in this mess because of today we have lost an office of this supposed to be on the ummah that takes care of that aspect as well. See, when you have a leadership that unites the ummah, one of the things that Amirul Mu'mineen, we call Imam, Khalifa, whichever terminology we want to use, the one who establishes the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the things that he does to make sure that the Islam is protected as well, not only implemented. Okay? So you are defending the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from all sides, from the material struggle that's happening against the ummah, and so is the intellectual. Hence you find the Sahaba were so careful when it comes to protecting the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A very quick example, in the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu an, one time he asked one of the great Sahaba of Rasulullah, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, okay, and he's not some regular Sahabi that you unknown Sahabi. He's a famous Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked him to visit him. He came, he said salam to Umar, and he did not get the response back from him. He's calling him from outside. He did 3 times and he left. Now Umar saw him again, and Umar said, "Where were you?" And his response was, "Well, I came and I remember the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you ask for permission 3 times, and if you don't get the permission, then go away." And that's what I did. And Umar's response was, "You better give me a bayyana. Give me a proof. What you're saying is from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or I am going to hurt you. I'm going to punish you." And now Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, look at him from the perspective of he's in front of Umar radiallahu anh. Okay? He's a tough guy, about which if you read the stories, one of the story talks about a woman had a miscarriage just because Umar turned around and looked at her.
I can imagine.
And Ali later on said that you have to pay for the diya for this. So now he's in front of Umar like that. Umar,
like this.
Abu Musa Ash'ari, he says, he goes to the gathering of the Ansar and he is shaking, turning yellow. And Sahaba asked, "What's going on? What happened to you?" And he said, "This is what happened." And Umar said, "Bring the bayyana or he's going to punish me." Now those Sahaba, they are, of course, they were aware of the hadith. And they want to teach a lesson to Umar also. They said, "Okay, among us, the youngest among us will go and tell him that he knows the hadith." And it was Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anh. He went over there and became the witness for this. The idea is, look, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, he was keen about protecting the deen. It was not like he was against Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Yeah? And same thing we see when it came to the preservation of the Quran as well, how it was preserved. So they were very keen on knowing exactly the right rulings about Islam, and they did not care who was in front of them, who was giving the information. They wanted to make sure that this is really the right information. And that's what we have to do today as well.
Allah Jazakallah khair. There are many questions. There is, okay, fine. Then one more question, Sheikh. One more question. Go ahead. Fadal. This says, Sheikh Asim, did you make it to the American Muslim Jewish Association conference in Chicago? And if so, what would you like to see more from them? By the way, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Kwame, man.
Amja. So I apologize. I did not make it to Amja. I know of the people who, at least a brother I know of, he went there. No, I did not go there. If it's online available, maybe I'll take a look.
Yeah, what I would like to say, though, if they did give a book of fatwa regarding the latest technologies, if you have access to that, we would love to see what fatwa they gave in that book. As a whole, I saw the book that they gave to everyone that attended. I think the whole discussion was the latest fatwa regarding the technologies that are being used by the Muslims today.
Social network? Are you referring to social network kind of stuff, or?
No. It was, so they meet every year.
Bitcoin.
So this year they met in Chicago, somewhere here close by, it seems. So obviously not everybody's invited, but it was a book that I saw that was also I saw the pictures of it. It seems like it was a fatwa, a book of fatwa. It's that they prepared to give it to all of those who followed.
So I know a brother, inshallah, I'll probably approach him and try to get the copy of it. I don't have a copy.
Please. I would love to actually have a discussion on that one time too.
Yeah, inshallah, I'll try to get access to that, inshallah. I apologize. No, I wasn't there. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, all right. So, Sheikhi, wallah, jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and preserve you and increase you in knowledge and use you for the benefit of this ummah. Wallahi, we need ulama and we need them now. We need the suffering of the ummah, and in every place and everywhere you turn, it's begs, it's the requirement of having people of truth and haqq is becoming more and more. So Sheikh, when we hear the voice of truth every time we speak, subhanallah, and it's a blessing to have brothers like you amongst us, so we can continue going back. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect and preserve you, Sheikh, and your family, and Allah use you for this ummah again. Jazakallahu khairan, wa barakallahu fik ya Sheikh. And for the rest of the
for having me.
If you wanted to say a few last words, Sheikh Asim.
No, Jazakumullah khairan for having me and giving me the opportunity to address a very important topic.
And you will be coming back more and more, believe me. So, and to the rest, the brothers and sisters who were listening, attending, I know brothers coming from New York and many other places. Brothers and sisters, the responsibility is amazing. As I said, innama yakhshallah, as Allah Azza wa Jal said, and we started this whole conversation with this ayah. You can only imagine what that means. The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, itself is enough to hear that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they are the ones who know Allah Azza wa Jal. They are the ones who have the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal. They are the ones responsible for spreading this deen. How much you cannot, responsibility is, yes, it's above and beyond. We all understand this. But the ulama, those who are learning this, are taking it upon themselves. But it doesn't come without responsibilities, and it will not come without accountability. Forget about this dunya and us, but imagine accountability in front of Allah, who will ask that here's what was given to you. You said you are going to carry it, and how dare you feared everybody else except me. So with that, inshallah, we will be back next week. We will have some announcements to make also regarding some of the weekends. We have few programs that are coming up, conferences coming up, inshallah. So brothers and sisters, keep watching this space, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر لا 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 لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل همام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر هذا عمر هذا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر